Welcome to Part 2 of the SB Admin Command Line Interface Power Usage training provided by Stork Software. Now, why would you want to use our command line interface when we have great GUI and web interfaces available? Well, the command line interface covers almost all of the tasks that you can perform inside of the GUI and web interfaces, and for people that are used to working at the command line, they can often get work done faster and more efficiently from the command line. One of the biggest reasons people choose to use our command line tools is that it then allows them to write scripts that can both direct the backup servers and get information from the backup servers for their own uses. In other words, they can really tailor the use of SBAdmin to their environment. And finally, we do occasionally come across customers who just don't have the ability to run either the GUI or web interface within their environment. So in today's demo, we're going to be doing a quick review of client, server, and backup job setup that was provided in part 1 of this training. We will look at running backups and restoring data and how to list data from a backup. We'll also look at how to create customized reports that can provide you pretty crucial information on the status of your backup jobs. And we will talk about managing job labels and how to expire backups and remove the files from your system. And finally, we'll look at creating boot media at the command line. We have several useful resources that you should consult when you're working with the command line. The first is our command line reference guide. If you go to our website, we have a great command line reference guide available to you in the support area under documentation. Additionally, within the install on your admin machine in opt Storks docs or user LPP Storks docs if you're on AIX, there are several README files that will give you information on how to perform more advanced functions like migrating servers and migrating administrators. And finally, we have the Storks Software YouTube website, which has a collection of our training videos. So, as far as the command line goes, let's go ahead and jump in and see it. You'll notice I'm starting with the GUI interface open. The reason I'm doing this is the interface that most of our customers are familiar with, and I want to give you an idea of what the environment is that we're working in. So, as you can see here, I have my host names are client 1 through client 4, and I have client 1 through client 4 all set up as backup clients. I've also configured client 1 and client 2 to work as backup servers, and if you look up here at the top, client 1 is also functioning as my admin. So client 1 has 3 different roles in this scenario. And now that you have an idea of the basic layout, let's go ahead and take off the training wheels and jump straight into the command line. So I am at a shell prompt for client 1, and the first thing I want to do is review a couple of the commands that we looked at last time. The first was stclient. With any of the commands, if you type the command without any flags, you'll get a list of usage for that command. Now, stclient, to list your clients, you use -L, but I in general prefer to use -LV for list verbose because it gives a little more information and takes up the same amount of space on the screen. So as you can see here, it looks like for some reason my client 4 has been set to use the optional feature atime, which means that it is going to preserve file access times on backup. Sometimes this can cause errors on certain types of systems, so let's look at how I might remove that option. I'm going to use the same command stclient and -A for add, because add will also let you adjust or edit any settings to existing clients. So I'm going to do stclient -A and then put the flag in that I want, and in this case it's going to be -TN to turn off the time, the file access time preservation, and then I just need to give it the client name. Now if we do an stclient -LV, we see that all of our clients list as just having the preserve sparse feature on. So that's a really quick way if you need to adjust any of those features to be able to do it. Remember also last time we worked on the stserver command. So let's go ahead and do an stserver minus LV. And you'll see that it lists both the server host name and all of our configured devices, the default directory for boot images when we run backups with automatic boot media creation, init, etc. And one extra flag that we went over last time was the -A flag. And what the -A flag does is give you the current status of all of your servers, or you can use the same one with the stclient command. So it actually works in both cases. Now this is the same command that the GUI and web interfaces are using to pull up that real-time data for you. In fact, if you want to create your own sort of real-time console, you can go ahead and use the operating system's watch command along with, say, stclient -A, and that will give you a real-time look at what's going on. So for example, I could go over here to client 4 and tell it to reboot, and once it actually shuts down the connections, we should see that reflected over here. And there we go. Client 4 now shows us down. So that's one way to get a real-time update if you're at the command line. Now, moving on from there, the next command we went over last time was the stjob command. So let's go ahead and look at our jobs. We have two jobs created here, and if we use stjob -LV, we can get all of the details of the jobs. Notice it's going to just spit out everything. If you have a lot of jobs, it could be a little bit overwhelming. So typing stjob -LV and then a specific job name will allow you to see just the information on that job. So let's go ahead and clear the screen and run that again. So now we can see that we've got this backup client's job, and what it's doing is backing up the etc directory of clients 1, 3, and 4 onto client 2. And then our other job, which was backup server, is running a full system backup of all of my data from client 2 onto client 1. So two different types of backups doing two different things. Now let's go ahead and run these jobs. We did go over this last time. You're going to use the stq command to place those jobs in your backup queue. And you do have to put them in one at a time, so we'll do stq -A for add. Do make note here that the stq job requires all of the flags to be capitalized. And we'll put in backup clients and backup server. And then if we use stq -L, that will show us the jobs in the queue. And again, we could use the watch command if we wanted to monitor the jobs while they're in the backup queue and be notified as soon as they're done. Now, let's say that we want to kill one of those jobs. We've decided for whatever reason we don't want it to run. stq -K, and then the name of the job will do that. So we could do backup server. And it's going to even tell us it may take a minute for the change to be reflected. But by the time we got there, it's nope, that's not that one. The backup client's job is done. That one's still in there. There we go. Now it's been removed. So one job finished and we killed the other job. Now, sometimes you want to see jobs running, a job run in the foreground so that you can diagnose problems. And the way you do that is with the strunjob command. So this will run it directly and bypass the backup queue. In fact, if we run this, it will never show up in the backup queue. So let's go ahead and do strunjob backup clients. And we can see it going through and doing all of our backups manually. Now, this will, of course, go through really quickly because we're not backing up a lot of data. But the biggest reason you'll want to do this is if you're getting errors in your backup job, you can see in real time what's happening and when it's happening. And our backup job just completed. So that's the difference between stq and strunjob. Now, if we want to look at what's been happening with our jobs and get a little bit of history, we would be using the streport command. And you'll notice it has a pretty lengthy list of options for usage, but they're pretty easy to break down. So the streport command is going to take a type, and once you've selected a type, then it has basically some sub options. So let's go over the types. You have 4 of them. You have net inst, expiration, history, and restore. Now, netinst or network install is only going to apply if you are configuring clients for network booting. So if you don't have any clients that are configured for network booting, this won't do you any good. There won't be any information here. And the second one, the expiration report options, or the type expiration, only applies when you're working with tape backups. So if you're writing your backups to disk, there will never be any information in here either. What this does is tells you, hey, that tape that you have sitting on your shelf actually now contains an expired backup based on your expiration policy, and you can go ahead and reuse it. So that's when you would want to use this, is to keep an eye on your tape rotation. The 2 that you'll use the most are the backup history report and the restore history report, and probably mostly just the backup history report, but let's look at both of these. So the first one we'll do is the type history. So we type streport -t for type history, and then we have to give it the sub option of what kind of history we want. It can do a history based on either client or on job. So let's go ahead and look at our job history. So -h job. This is pretty much the simplest command that I ever used to run this. And it's going to spit out a whole bunch of output showing me every time every job has been run. One handy flag to add to this is -b, and what that will do is give you averages for your jobs. So if we take a look at this, and I'm going to scroll up here to look at our first backup job, and that's the backup clients job. It's showing us the history of every time it was run on each client. Remember, that backup job is backing up 3 different clients. And it's telling us subtotals or sub-averages for each client, saying, okay, for this client, this job normally runs for 1 minute, on average backs up about 257 megabytes of data, and I'm getting throughput of about 11 megabytes per second. And then at the bottom, it averages all the averages and tells me on average a client within this backup job is taking less than a minute to run its backup, backing up 173 megabytes and getting, again, about 12 megabytes of throughput per second. So the subtotal and the total, like in this case, they match because there's only one client in the backup job. But pretty handy if you want to keep an eye on what overall is going on with your backup jobs. Now, you can limit the output of this to a specific date, but I don't want to get too down that rabbit hole here. You can always look up the usage on that again by just typing streport. You'd be using these -f date for the first date and -l date for the last date. And you can specify a certain range, which is really handy, say, for scripting if you wanted to get the output of all the jobs run in the last week and then take some kind of action on them. So we've looked at the history based on job. Now let's look at history based on client. So it's going to go through for every single client and give us a ton of information. What if we want to zoom in on a specific client? Well, we can pass it a flag -k and then give it a client name, and it will just give us the output of that client. So now we can go through here and look at client 3's backup history, and this will tell us every backup job. So if we had other backup jobs that also included client 3, they would be in here too. And the most important column, in my opinion, to look at is this %complete/return code column. And it looks like we've had pretty successful backups recently, but our first backup got 86% complete and then hit a return code of 99. Now, return code of 99 is going to be a little bit ambiguous for you unless you have somewhere to look up those return codes. And let's switch back to the user guide and I can show you exactly where to get those return codes. So again, if you go on our website to the SB admin commands reference guide, on page 8, it actually lists all of, oh, not page 8, let's see. Oh no, there it is, page 8 here. And this shows all the codes. So 99, error code 99 means killed by user. Somebody actually either hit Control C while the job was running, or they used the kill command against the queue. And this tells you all the different codes that could output and what they mean. So it's a good way to be able to decode that information. So we know that somebody actually manually or purposefully killed this job, and that's why it didn't finish. And it looks like, I would guess, it was probably killed because it was getting really big and the person wanted to investigate why the backup job was so big when normally it only backs up 22 megabytes. So it sounds like, or it looks like, maybe the person went in and realized this was backing up more than they wanted to, killed the job, reconfigured it, and then reran it, especially looking at the times here. All right, so moving on from there, we've done streport history by job and history by client. Let's go ahead and look at the streport history on restores. So we change the type to restore, and then we also have to give it an H, and for now we'll do job. You can also do it by backup ID. And it's saying that no restore logs are found. So what that means is that nobody has ever done any restores on this system. So let's talk about that. Restores are done with the strestore command. And you'll see it's got a few options here. Of course, you would expect strestore to be able to restore things, but there are a couple of tricks that it can do that are really handy. Number one is verify. So if you want to go back sometime down the road and double check just to make sure that the backup data still has integrity, you would use this verify flag, or you can use the -L list and actually find out, based on different sorting filters, exactly what is inside that backup job. Notice on the bottom here under options it says -V for more or show extended usage. I actually recommend anytime you're going to look at this to grab that extended usage, because you're going to need some of the commands in there just to, oops, mistyped it, just to do a basic, to run the basic strestore command. So you might as well get all of the information out at once. Now, this information also is, of course, available on the website. So if you switch back over, if we switch back over to Google Chrome, oh, hit the wrong guy there. So if you switch back over to Google Chrome and pull up strestore, you can get the full output there. Specifically, you're going to need these tables here that show you the type of restore that you can do, because you'll need to tell the command which type of data you want to look at or restore. So let's get this out of our way. And switching back here, you can see that there are a bunch of different data types we can use. So we can restore directories, whole file systems, individual files. The one that you'll notice, if you're familiar with our software, that is pretty obviously missing here is a full system. The full system data type is not available here because to do a full system restore, you actually need boot media. You cannot do a full system restore from the strestore command. So that's a good thing to keep an eye on. Now, as I said, one of the really handy things that you can do in here is use this -L list flag to see the files in a backup. And let's look a little bit at how that works. So first off, one of the things you need to know is that the strestore command gets run on the client, not on the server. So whichever client you're going to want to restore the data to, or you want to look up the data for that client, you need to run it on that client. So I've got client 2 open here, And let's go ahead and build up the command just to see what's in the backup. Remember, with the st report, oops, we need the K. So we can see that we had some backups here, and I want to go to probably my last good backup and make sure the files that I want are actually in there. So let's go ahead and check that out. So we're going to type strestore minus L for list, minus T for type, and I'm going to go ahead and use, I've got my types here, I'm going to use capital R for regular files. Now I need to tell it a couple other things. I need to tell it which device was used for this backup, and I can get that from the stjob minus LV, and we'll go ahead and give it the backup name, which was the job ID, which is backup server. And it wants this output device, so it knows where to look. And after that, we need to tell it the actual backup label or backup ID for that. And we had that right up here. We want to use this last good one that got 100% complete. And then we also have to tell it where the backup server is. So we basically have to tell the command, this is the machine you're going to, this is the directory, and this is the backup label that you're looking for. And we know from the description of the job that it's running its backups to server client 1. So we put client 1 in there. Now it says no disk backup file exists, so that means that backup actually got deleted. So let's go ahead and look at another one. Let's look at this one that quit here. And maybe we want to look at that one, and it looks like it was killed 6% in. Let's see, we want to look at it to see how much actually got backed up. Because when Storix fails a backup, it doesn't automatically delete the information in it, because we assume that even if the backup only got halfway complete, maybe you need that information, maybe it's critical, and you weren't able to get another backup. Okay, so that one looks like it definitely got a lot of information, and it's flipping by every single file that it backed up. And it's all done. Now, if you're really handy, you can grep right through that, so you could just grep the command, or what I like to do is take the command and shoot it out to a separate file. So let's put like files.list. That way I can fool around with it a little bit more. Okay, so it took that output, stuck it in a file, and now I'm free to do whatever I want. I can open it in V and search VI. I can search around. I can cat the file and then grep for, let's say I want to see if temp got backed up. Yep, temp got backed up, and it's showing me all the files that got backed up in temp. So pretty handy usage there. Now, if I actually wanted to restore some files, let's say I wanted to restore that temp directory, here's what I would do. I would type strestore, and let's go ahead and just reuse our command line so we don't have to retype stuff. So instead of minus L for list, we're going to do minus R for restore. Let's do a data type of directories. Let's say I want to restore the entire temp directory. And we still need to give it all this other information, but we also need to tell it exactly which directory we're restoring. So again, if we do strestore minus V to get the usage, and we know what data type we gave it, we also need to give it the actual data that we want it to use. And see, that's the data list right there. So we've got our options, and at the end comes the data list. So we should just be able to put temp, and let's see what happens. Okay, looks like it went through and tried to restore temp, but because the backup got canceled, there was an end of file, unexpected end of file in the archive, so we didn't actually get that temp data. But that's how you would run a restore. Now, one of the problems or one of the issues we have is that we've got this partially useful file that might or might not have actual files in it that we can restore. In fact, one of the things we could have done is use the strestore command and just tried to restore everything. And it would restore as much as it could and then fail out. So I don't really want that archive sitting around. It's not any good. I don't want it wasting disk space. I probably want to free up some disk space for other jobs. So how do I get rid of my backups? Well, you can do that with a couple different commands. The first one you're going to want to use is stprintlabel. So this will allow us to figure out exactly what happened with this backup job here that caused it to fail. So we need the job number, which is this number right here. And we're going to use the stprintlabel command and -b to specify the backup or the backup ID, and then just put that backup ID in there. Oh, and the reason this isn't working is this is an admin level command. I can't run it on my client server. So let's flip back and do that again. stprintlabel and then -b 14146127161. Okay, so this is showing us that the status was that it was killed, and we can actually find out exactly where it was killed. There are a couple different flags you can use with stprintlabel. The first one is -d, and what -d is going to do is show you the backup profile options that were used when the backup was created. So we know that we were trying to create a full system backup, no compression. This might or might not be useful to you. What is very useful is to use the -o flag, because that will give you the entire output of the job as if you were sitting there running it. So we can see here exactly what happened, which is if the backup started, it applied an exclude list for me, generated my file list, and then started writing the file system. And as it was writing the root file system, somebody killed the process. And it looks like that was killed at 12:59, so the job had just started running. And now I know exactly what happened. One of my backup administrators went in here and killed the backup job for whatever reason. So now that I've used the stprintlabel to investigate what's going on in there, since this backup isn't any good to me, I couldn't restore my temp data out of it anyway. Let's go ahead and look at getting rid of it. So to get rid of it, we're going to use stremove label. And you don't have to use the -b flag in this one. You can just put that backup ID in there. So if we grab that, and I normally like to copy and paste just so I don't fat finger it. Now, it's going to tell me unable to remove backup ID because there are disk image backups associated. So this is sort of the warning that you would get if you were in the admin. It's telling you, hey, there's still data on the disk. Are you sure you want to do this? You're going to wipe it out. So for scripting, obviously, you don't want that to come up. You want to do what you told it to. And to do so, you need to use the -f flag. And that will force it to be removed. Note one thing. If I do streport -t history -h client and give it that client again, client 2, notice that that backup is still listed in the history. That's because the streport command keeps track of all of my backups that have been run since the time that this server software was installed. So these backups might or might not still exist. It's just telling me what happened back at that time. Now, if I try to run, let's say, stprintlabel on it, it's going to tell me that's not defined. So in other words, that backup's already been deleted. Okay, so we've worked with backup labels. Now, the last thing that we talked about was creating boot media. Now, this we're going to have to switch back over for because this is one of the other commands that's run on the client. And that is because when we create boot media, we create boot media that is customized to that client. So the command is called stmakeboot. And what I'm going to do, since we're working over here, is let's make this text a little bit larger so you can see better. So you'll see there are a lot of options on STMakeBoot. And if you've ever manually created boot media within our software in the utilities menu, you'll know that. There's a lot of information that you can pre-populate into the boot media so that you can do things like a silent network installation, which we call no prompt. Now, I want to do just the simplest version here, but as you can see, not only can you create boot ISOs, which you can then burn or attach to a VM, but you can configure a disk like a thumb drive for doing booting. You can create an initRD. You can make tapes bootable on PowerPC. You can configure network booting here. So you can do all of those commands here, but let's just stick to something easy. So let's do stmakeboot -t cd-rom. That's the easiest one and the one that people use the most. And then we have to tell it one thing, and that is where we want the CD-ROM to go. So -o stands for output. And you do need to put the full path here or it will get mad at you. So we're going to put it in Storix netboot, and we'll call this training.iso. Now the software is going to go through the system and cherry pick the proper kernel, create a custom initram FS, basically do everything it needs to make sure that this client 2 can be restored either to the same machine or to somewhere else. So it's going to package up everything that it needs. In the meantime, while that's running, let's go over one more time the stcheck command, because this is something here in the support department that we on a daily basis work with people on, so we want to make sure that you're aware of that. The stcheck command is going to make sure that you have good network communication for the software to be able to work, because oftentimes we'll find that people can, for example, ping from, let's say, client 1 to client 2, but their backups aren't working. Well, if you do stcheck from client 1 to client 2, it's going to look at not ping, which is the ICMP protocol on a different port, but it's going to look at, can I do TCP traffic over ports 5026 and 5027, the Storix default ports, unless you have something else configured, and make sure that it actually can hit the server on the other side. And we generally tell people to do this 3 different ways. First of all, from client to server, and then from server to client. And what you want to look at is to make sure that they are reporting the IP addresses in the way that you expect them. So I want to make sure everything matches here. Now, this is saying that my local IP address is 192.168.1.247, and that matches. The host name client 2 matches. Same thing for the other way, 1.246, 1.246, client 1, client 1. So that's what you want to look for. The other check that you can run is stcheck against the machine itself. And the reason you want to do this is for the same reason. You want to make sure that the machine also agrees with the information that it's getting. So we want to make sure that client 1, when we run through the Storix software, is getting the proper IP address, is getting the proper host name. A lot of times what we'll see when people do this is maybe this will show the loopback address, and if they go into etc hosts, it turns out in their etc host file they have, for some reason, the host name is on the same line as the loopback address, things like that. It will also check the ports to make sure that the ports are open locally. So it can help you diagnose, if you're having trouble communicating on those ports, whether the ports are blocked here on your machine or maybe on a router in between the two. All right, so that covers our advanced command line training. Let's go ahead and switch back to the slides. So we will have some future trainings coming up. We do these trainings monthly, and please stop by our website to see the trainings that are coming up. And we would always love to hear from you. You can email us at sba@storix.com and let us know what you want to see in a training. So we want to thank you for coming here. Again, if you're not on our YouTube site, you can reach our YouTube site here. And if you haven't downloaded our software, you can get a 30-day free trial at this address. So thanks for joining us, and we will talk to you soon.